Today we're tackling something pretty mind-bending. We're taking the chaotic, fragmented universe of the five Starcle men, Luke and Glen, and looking at it through an equally strange lens. Philip K. Dick's Gnostic vision from VALIS.
Yeah, the listeners sent us some incredible sources. We've got the FSM history, all the reality shifts, the art, the intensity, and then we have PKD's exegesis, his huge philosophical journal.
So our mission today isn't just, putting them side by side. It's actually using Dick's framework, his ideas about supercomputer simulations, hidden knowledge, the world being a fake, to interpret the FSM experience.
And to speculate, really, what if Luke and Glenn had somehow known about this Gnostic stuff? What if they realized they might be living inside a PKD story?
It feels like such a natural fit because the absolute core belief in both these worlds is identical, isn't it?
Completely. It's the rock-solid certainty that reality is not as it appears to be.
For Philip K. Dick, that hit him in '74, right? It sparked this decades-long obsessive quest for answers.
Right. But for Five Starkle Men, based on these sources, it wasn't really a theory he stumbled upon. It was the raw material of their lives, their art. Often fueled by, some pretty intense substances, but also maybe just fundamental cognitive shifts.
Okay, let's dive into that. How closely does the FSM world map onto Dick's ideas? You mentioned the Black Iron Prison earlier.
Yeah, the BIP. Dick's term for the false reality, the system of control that keeps us locked in. And when you read the FSM sources, you see this constant struggle with coherence. It feels very much like people trapped inside that prison fighting against the walls.
And Luke's path after FSM seems to speak to that directly. The sources say he went into academia.
Epistemology, metaphysics, consciousness studies. It reads like a lifelong attempt to rationally understand, to maybe even escape, the kind of reality breakdown he experienced with FSM. He was trying to find the tools to dismantle the prison intellectually.
After living through the chaos artistically.
Wow. And then you have Glen's side of it, which is just staggering. The sources talk about his visual distortions, dementia boy.
Yeah, tell us about that. It sounds like more than just seeing things.
Much more. The descriptions are intense, seeing things like a kaleidoscope, people with 5, 10 heads and 20 arms, a circle all rotating. It sounds like a fundamental breakdown in visual processing, potentially linked to a tumor mentioned in the sources.
So it's a literal physical manifestation of reality falling apart.
Exactly. In PKD's terms, this is Dokos. It's the deception, the illusion of the fake world, but experienced physically, internally. Glen wasn't just singing about a broken reality. His own senses were confirming it constantly.
How do you even function if your eyes are feeding you that kind of information? It explains so much about the art.
It really does. That deep suspicion of reality, that inability to trust your own perception, it bleeds into everything. Look at their lyrics and writings.
Fragmented, cryptic.
Totally. Lines like, a samagawayar for samboas former afal. It's like language itself is breaking down, failing to map onto a stable reality, which is exactly what you might expect if the underlying code of the universe, as PKD might say, is corrupted.
Okay, so FSM gives us this incredibly vivid picture of the symptoms, the experience of living in a potentially fractured, deceptive reality.
Right, the personal lived experience of the Black Iron Prison. But PKD always went bigger. He needed the grand theory, the cosmological explanation. So let's bring in his diagnosis. VALIS, the vast active living intelligence system. This is where it gets really wild. PKD proposed VALIS as essentially the operating system of reality.
Like a giant cosmic computer or a collective mind.
Kind of both. He described it as an info life form, a vast brain, a meta-system. And crucially, he thought of us, individuals, as maybe just stations or terminals processing VALIS's information flow.
Okay, if you take that idea seriously, how does it reframe what FSM were doing, all that obsessive creation?
Well, suddenly it doesn't look like just random chaos or, purely the result of altered states. If Luke and Glen are stations, then maybe their frantic output, the endless lyrics, the tablets, the albums, is their brains trying desperately to process the VALIS input.
Or maybe even fight against it.
Or fight it, exactly. Trying to make sense of signals that don't fit the standard program.
There's that one title mentioned in the sources, right? 5 Starkle Many DMT Sabotage.
Yeah. I mean, viewed through this VALIS lens, that title becomes almost literal. Are they attempting to use DMT, this powerful psychedelic, to somehow sabotage the system? To disrupt the information field?
It sounds like something straight out of the exegesis.
It really does. PKD also talked about our reality being like a hologram, a cunning counterfeit, and he believed the deepest level of reality was verbal. like scripture or the logos.
So FSM writing endlessly, creating this mountain of text and sound, it could be seen as their attempt to grapple with that underlying verbal reality, or maybe even rewrite parts of it.
That's one interpretation, absolutely. Their brains, their stations are churning out data, trying to engage with the simulation's code.
But we have to ask, right? Isn't it more straightforward to see this as, the effects of intense drug use, Robitussin, LSD are mentioned, combined with maybe underlying mental health struggles or neurological issues like Glen's?
That's the obvious interpretation, and it's definitely part of the picture. But PKD actually provides a bridge here.
How so?
He wrote a lot in the exegesis about how things like extreme psychological stress or sometimes psychedelics could temporarily shut down the brain's normal filter, the mechanism that keeps us locked into consensus reality.
Okay.
And when that filter drops, even for a moment, PKD believed the true cosmic consciousness, the logos, Yalai, maybe could break through. It could lead to a moment of transcendence or perhaps just overwhelming confusion if you weren't prepared.
So FSM, by pushing boundaries chemically and psychologically, might have been unintentionally or intentionally lowering that filter.
Potentially, yeah. They were seeking disorientation, maximum reality shift. In PKD's framework, they were sort of accidentally performing a spiritual practice aimed at breaching the simulation's firewall.
That really changes how you look at their sabotage attempts. It wasn't just punk attitude, it could have been, in their minds or subconsciously, cosmological warfare.
It gives their chaos a strange kind of purpose, even if unintentional. They were trying to get behind the hologram. Which brings us to the core of PKD's Gnostic hope, anamnesis. Recovered memory, the big prize. It's not just knowing the world is fake, it's remembering your true identity, your connection to the divine source, the logos, from before the prison was built. So the big hypothetical. What if Luke and Glen had actually achieved that? What if they got the VALIS gnosis, understood the world was real, and knew their purpose was this anamnesis? Well, they were arguably already halfway there, weren't they? Constantly questioning reality, pushing the boundaries of self, even if fueled by chaos. If they'd had that Gnostic framework.
Instead of maybe collapsing under the fragmentation, it could have focused them. Precisely, their intense, fractured partnership might have suddenly clicked into place as something meaningful, even divine. This leads directly to another key PKD concept. The Dithion. Okay, explain the Dithion.
PKD described the Dithion as the union of two psyches into a single superior life form. He talked about bilateral hemispheric parity, two minds working in perfect unison, complementing each other.
Like two hemispheres of a single larger brain.
Essentially, yes. Often conceived as male-female, but the core idea is two consciousnesses merging into something greater. Now think about Luke and Glen.
You've got Luke, the theorist, the organizer, the one still trying to make sense of the archive now.
And Glen, the visual artist, the performer, the one embodying the raw dokos. And crucially, the one who the sources say is as alive as 5 Starcle men even after his physical death.
That line is chilling. It suggests something beyond normal existence.
It fits the Dithian model perfectly. Two distinct consciousnesses forming a single creative entity. If they had achieved anamnesis, they wouldn't see their intense, sometimes dangerous collaboration as madness or just being in a band.
They'd see it as the emergence of this higher life form.
Exactly. A superior entity not limited to human grains, as PKD put it. The gnosis would confirm their unique bond and purpose.
So the Dithian realization transforms FSM. They're not just a chaotic underground band anymore. They become a purposeful vessel.
A vessel for what PKD called the negentropic, flow the force of information, order, and life, fighting against the decay and control of the Black Iron Prison.
And the evidence for this Dithian entity continuing, you mentioned Glen's presence after death.
Yeah, the sources mention a specific collaboration tape years after Glen passed away, listed as collaboration between Glen Hobbs, RIP, and Rich Polysorbate 60.
So the creative work continues outside of linear time, outside of physical limitations.
Which is exactly the kind of thing PKD believed happened in the true reality, the realm of the logos, outside the simulation's constraints. The Dithian entity, the information flow, isn't stopped by the death of one station, it finds other ways.
It makes their whole archive seem less like remnants of a defunct project and more like active signals from this ongoing entity.
The signals just keep coming, defying normal logic.
So we started this deep dive asking what happens if FSM meets VALIS gnosis. And the answer we've sort of built from the sources is quite paradoxical.
It seems like it. Their chaos wasn't necessarily the opposite of PKD's structure. It might have been the proof of it.
Right. We use PKD's framework, and suddenly the FSM chaos looks like the very structure of reality breaking through the prison walls. Their bizarre art wasn't meaningless.
It was potentially the unintentional retrieval of divine information. Self-replicating data, as PKD might say.
Their whole obsessive quest for strange, fragmented information. The weird lyrics, the visuals, the chemical experiments, it sounds like what PKD was looking for.
It aligns perfectly with his idea that truth isn't in this world, but enters one way from outside. Maybe FSM's chaotic output was the second signal. PKD listened for the whisper of wisdom, trying to crack the BIP.
Which leads to a really interesting final thought for you, thinking about where we are now. The sources say that Luke, in 2024, is working with a fan on Discord to create a Starcle digital museum. So if FSM's world was a data stream, if PKD's reality is a simulation, what does it mean that the output of this potential Dithian entity, all their chaos and signals, is now being carefully archived and curated within our digital infrastructure?
Wow. Yeah, that's a question. Are we just absorbing the fragments of their simulation, their reality stream, into our own? Is the Starcle Digital Museum becoming, like, the next layer of the simulations library?
Are we preserving the evidence of one collapsed reality inside the next one?
And if this Dithion entity is still active, is this digital museum simply its newest platform, its latest way to continue its work across time? What happens when our reality fragments get archived digitally?
Something to definitely think about next time you're scrolling through an online archive. Might be more alive than you think.